Welcome, everyone. One of the best ways to prepare for the IELTS speaking test is to see it in action. That's exactly what we're doing today with this complete mock test from Spinta. As you listen, think about what the candidate does well and where they could improve. Afterwards, we'll compare notes with a full performance breakdown. Let's begin. Good morning. Can you please tell me your full name?
Good morning. My name is Daniel Martin. Actually, people call me Dan most of the time, but for the test I use my full name. I come from a medium-sized city near the coast, and I moved to this town 3 years ago for work.
Thank you. And can I see your identification, please?
Yes, here it is. Sorry, I left it on top of my bag. There you go.
Thank you. Now we are going to start with some questions about you. Let's talk about your home. Where do you live now?
I live in a small apartment in a busy neighborhood in the city center. It is not very large, maybe 2 rooms, but it is quite bright because there are big windows facing the street. I have been lived here for 5 years, or rather I moved here 5 years ago and I have been living here since then. It's convenient for my job and shops are close.
What do you like about your neighborhood?
What I like most is the sense of community and easy access to transport. There are small cafes where people know each other, and sometimes there is a market on Sundays so I can buy fresh vegetables. Also, the park is nearby, so in evenings I go there to walk. It is peaceful enough, even if it is center of city.
Has your home changed since you moved there?
Yes, it changed a bit. When I first moved, it was nearly empty. I had only a mattress and a small table. Over time, I collected some furniture and books, and now it feels more like a proper home. I painted one wall green because I like colors, and that made room feel more comfortable. I think little changes like that matter.
Let's move on. Now I will ask about your family. How many people are there in your family?
In my immediate family, there are 4 people. My parents, my sister and me. My sister, she is older by 2 years, and she lives in another city with her husband. We are quite close though. We talk on phone almost every weekend, and sometimes we meet for holiday. My parents still live in the house where I grew up, and they like gardening a lot.
What do you enjoy doing with your family?
We enjoy cooking together, especially on special occasions like birthdays. My mother, she cooks traditional meals and I try to help, but often I end up washing dishes. We also like going to countryside for short trips. Sometimes we go fishing with my father, and it is relaxing. Those times are important because we rarely all be together during the week.
Do you think family relationships are different now compared to past?
Yes, I think they are different because people are busier and digital communication changed how we stay in touch. My grandparents had families that lived in same village and they saw each other daily, but today many families are spread across cities or countries. On the other hand, technology makes it easier to talk often, but it is not always same as meeting face to face.
Now about work or study. What do you do at the moment?
I work as a marketing coordinator for a small technology company. My job includes planning social media content, helping with events, and analyzing some data from campaigns. It is varied work, and I like the creative part of it. I have been working there for 3 years, and I feel I learned many practical skills, though sometimes the deadlines are very tight and make me a bit stressed.
Why did you choose this kind of work?
I studied communication at university, and I always liked working with ideas and messages. Also, I'm very interested about how people behave online, and marketing gave me chance to study that practically. When I graduated, I had internship at similar company, and I enjoyed the atmosphere and the tasks, so I decided to stay in this field.
Do you plan to change jobs in the future?
Maybe in future I will look for a different role, perhaps more strategic, like marketing manager. Right now I want to gain more experience and maybe do a short course about data analytics to improve my skills. I don't have a definite plan to leave, but I aim to develop and maybe work in larger company later.
Let's talk about hobbies. What do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time, I like reading, cooking and cycling. Reading is my favorite because it helps me relax and learn. I am really enjoy to reading, especially contemporary novels and some non-fiction about psychology. I probably spend about 1 hour each evening reading before sleep. Cooking is fun because I can be creative with flavors, and cycling helps me stay fit and explore the city.
How long have you had these hobbies?
Reading I have been doing since childhood. My mother, she used to take me to library every weekend. Cycling I started more recently, about 4 years ago, as a way to commute sometimes and to exercise. Cooking I began seriously when I moved out and had to prepare meals for myself. Over time I improved and now I try new recipes on weekends.
What do you enjoy most about cycling?
I enjoy the freedom and the feeling of being outdoors. When I cycle, I can choose different routes, sometimes along the riverside or through quiet streets, and it helps clear my mind after work. Also, it is practical and cheap transport, and I feel healthier when I use my bike instead of bus sometimes.
Now tell me about your daily routine. What is a normal weekday like for you?
On a weekday, I usually wake up at 7, have coffee, and check emails quickly. Then I cycle or take bus to work, arrive at 9, and spend the morning planning posts or meeting with the team. Lunch is often with colleagues. We sometimes go to nearby cafe. Afternoons are for creating content and analyzing results. I finish work at 6, and in evening I either go to gym, meet friends or stay home reading. Weekdays are busy, but I try to keep some balance.
Has your routine changed recently?
Yes, since company allowed flexible hours, I have been starting earlier sometimes and finishing earlier too, which helped me attend a night class on Thursdays. Also, I try to have screen-free time before bed now, because previous I used phone a lot and slept poorly. Small changes like that improved my sleep and mood.
Finally, in part 1, what are your future plans for next 5 years?
In next 5 years, I hope to progress in my career, maybe move into a managerial role and work on bigger projects. I also would like to travel more and perhaps live abroad for a short time to learn different perspectives. On personal side, I want to save for a small property because rent is high and I think owning a place would be good long term. But I am flexible because life can change unexpectedly.
Right. That is the end of part 1. Now I will give you a topic for part 2. You have 1 minute to prepare and you should speak for 1 to 2 minutes. Here is your topic. Describe a memorable trip you took. Please say where you went, when you went, who you went with, and explain why this trip was memorable.
Thank you. Well, one of the most memorable trips I took was to the northern mountains about 3 years ago. I went with 2 close friends from university. We rented a small cabin near a lake and spent 5 days there. The journey started early in the morning, and the road up to the mountains was winding and green. I remember the air felt very fresh, and there were wildflowers everywhere. During the days we hiked to different viewpoints. On the second day we climbed to the top of a hill and watched the sunset, which painted the valley in orange and purple. That moment felt peaceful, and I realized how small city problems are when you see wide nature. We also cooked together, talked late into the night, and played guitar by the fire. One evening we had a sudden rainstorm and we had to run under the porch laughing and soaked, but then we drank hot tea and shared stories. That simple togetherness made the trip special. It was memorable because I felt very relaxed and close to friends, and I also learned to appreciate slow pace of rural life. After returning, I felt refreshed and more motivated at work. I think that trip taught me that taking short breaks and spending time with important people is essential for mental health and creativity. Is that enough?
Yes, thank you. Can you tell me which moment from the trip you remember most and why?
The moment I remember most is the sunset from the hilltop. We arrived tired, but the view was fantastic, and we were all quiet for a while, just watching sky change color. It felt like everything paused and there was no rush. I remember feeling very grateful for friends, and that calmness stayed with me for weeks after returning.
Did that trip change the way you travel now?
Yes, it changed me a bit. Now I prefer slower trips where I can disconnect and spend time outdoors rather than trying to see too many tourist spots quickly. I also try to plan trips with people who appreciate quiet times and not only partying. That trip made me value quality over quantity in travel.
Now we will move to part 3. I will ask some questions about travel and tourism. Do you think people today travel more than in the past?
Yes, I think people travel more today for several reasons. Transport is cheaper and more convenient, flights connect many continents, and budget airlines made travel accessible. Also, social media encourages people to share trips, and that creates desire to visit new places. Work patterns changed too. Some companies allow remote work, which makes it easier to travel while working. But more travel also means people sometimes rush through places and miss deeper cultural experiences.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of tourism for local communities?
Tourism brings economic benefits like jobs, income for small businesses, and development of infrastructure. For example, in my country, some villages prosper because tourists visit and buy local crafts. On the other hand, there are negatives: overcrowding, rising prices for locals, and environmental damage if tourism not managed properly. Sometimes local culture can be commodified to satisfy tourists, which can reduce authenticity. Sustainable tourism is important to balance benefits and harms.
How can local governments reduce negative effects of tourism?
Governments can set limits on visitor numbers in sensitive areas, enforce rules about waste, and protect natural habitats. Also, investing in infrastructure like waste management and public transport helps reduce impact. Another idea is to encourage off-season tourism to avoid peaks and support local businesses year-round. Education campaigns for tourists about respectful behavior are useful too, and involving local communities in decision-making ensures their needs are considered.
Do you think technology has changed the way people travel?
Absolutely. Technology changed almost every stage of travel, from planning to sharing experiences. People use apps to book flights, find reviews, and map routes. Translation apps help communication with locals, and mobile payments allow cashless purchases. However, technology can also make travel feel less spontaneous because people try to replicate perfect Instagram moments. There is a tension between convenience and authentic experience.
How important is tourism to a country's economy compared to other sectors?
Tourism can be very important, especially for countries with natural attractions or cultural heritage. It creates many jobs in hospitality, transport, and retail. But relying too heavily on tourism is risky because it is vulnerable to global events like pandemics or economic downturns. Diversifying the economy is safer, so while tourism contributes significantly in some places, it should complement other sectors like manufacturing or technology rather than replace them.
Do you think people will travel more or less in future?
I think travel will continue, but maybe in different forms. Climate concerns may reduce long-distance flying for some people, and there may be rise in more sustainable, slower travel choices. Also, virtual experiences and augmented reality could change interest, but I believe many people will still want physical travel because nothing replaces real encounters with places and people. So quantity might change, but desire to explore will remain.
How does travel affect people's attitudes and opinions?
Travel exposes people to different cultures and ways of life, which can broaden perspective and reduce prejudices. Meeting locals, trying new foods, and seeing different histories often makes people more tolerant and curious. Travel can also challenge assumptions and encourage personal growth. On the other hand, superficial tourism that only touches surface can reinforce stereotypes if people do not engage deeply.
What responsibilities do tourists have when they visit other countries?
Tourists should respect local customs, follow laws, and support local businesses when possible. They must avoid damaging natural sites and be mindful of waste. Learning a few words in the local language or researching cultural norms shows respect and goes a long way. Responsible behavior ensures that tourism benefits both visitors and host communities.
Some people say tourism makes places lose their authenticity. Do you agree?
I agree partly. When places are designed primarily for tourists, local traditions can be simplified or staged, and prices can push residents out. But authenticity is not static. Cultures evolve. If tourism is managed with local input and profit support communities, it can preserve rather than erase traditions. The problem is when short-term profit dominates decisions.
Finally, do you think travel can help solve international problems?
Travel alone cannot solve big international problems, but it can contribute positively. By fostering understanding between people and building networks, travel can reduce misunderstandings and encourage cooperation. Exchange programs and cultural tourism create dialogue, which may help long-term. But solving issues like climate change requires policy and large-scale cooperation beyond individual travel experiences.
Thank you. That is the end of the speaking test. Do you have anything you would like to add?
No, thank you. It was good practice and I hope my answers were clear. Thank you for your time.
The candidate demonstrated Band 6 level performance. Notable grammatical errors included saying I have been lived here for 5 years, when it should be I have lived here for 5 years. And saying I am really enjoy to reading when it should be I really enjoy reading. Another example was my mother, she used to take me to library every weekend, where the correct phrasing would be my mother used to take me to the library every weekend. These errors appeared occasionally across the test and in both short and long responses. They were not constant but repeated enough to be noticeable. The candidate's fluency was generally good with a natural flow, though there were moments of hesitation and self-correction such as I have been lived and, which slightly interrupted the rhythm but did not prevent understanding. Vocabulary range was adequate for everyday and familiar topics, with words like sustainable, authenticity, and infrastructure, but there were some imprecise choices and wrong prepositions, such as interested about instead of interested in. Grammatically, the candidate showed ability with a variety of structures and produced extended answers, but weaknesses were systematic with articles, some verb forms, and occasional subject-verb phrasing. Overall, this performance fits a band 6.5. Because communication was clear and coherent, the candidate gave extended and relevant answers, with some examples and personal detail, and pronunciation was generally clear. What prevented a higher score were the repeated grammatical inaccuracies, some collocation and preposition errors, and occasional hesitations that reduced smoothness. To reach the next band, the candidate should reduce recurring tense and article mistakes, expand precision in vocabulary and collocations, and practice speaking with fewer pauses and more confident linking words. Thank you for practicing with this IELTS speaking mock test. Visit Spinta for more comprehensive mock tests and personalized feedback to boost your IELTS score.